Hey guys, Donald from St Paul's Kids here. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had a problem right in front of you, but the solution seems obvious, but to do it, you know you've got to do something that you shouldn't. But it seems easy, just go do that, just go take that, just go say this to get out of trouble. Well, the guy in our story today, he got promised something amazing. He got promised he would be a king. And then one day, the person in his way was almost delivered to him by a platter. And he had a hard choice to make. And that's where we start our story off. But before that happened, that particular moment, the guy of our story, his name was Dave. He was just a shepherd boy. He had 7 brothers older than him. He was right down the pecking order in that stage. And back then, the youngest wasn't like now where everyone loves the youngest. He was the youngest and the forgotten, the working child. But one day, a prophet came into town and he said something amazing. He got David and he poured oil on his head, which is a bit weird for us now, I know, but back then, and what that means is a significant of someone being anointed or chosen for a task. And the prophet of all of Israel, Samuel, said to this little 12-year-old or maybe 17-year-old teenager boy, you are going to be the king of this country. Well, you can imagine what his brothers would have thought when they heard this guy say, what? But I imagine what David would have been like, this guy's pouring all over my head. What did he say? King of the country? What? But what about the king that's here now? What is Saul? As a young kid, like a young teen. And so his name, he became a leader in the army and a general. But Saul heard the people talk about David and what an amazing king he would make and what an awesome man he is. David wanted no bar of it. He knew what God had said in his promise to him. But he knew that it would be God's timing, not his. And so he had some problems he had to work through. One stage, Saul even tried to have him killed. He got so angry at David that he literally took his army to hunt down David and a group of friends and other warriors that had gathered around David. And he would hunt them down. And it was like years that David had to spend in the wilderness, running away all the time because he didn't want to fight Saul. He didn't want to hurt him because as far as David was concerned, yes, God said he was going to be king, but he would be king on God's time, not his. So here was a guy who lived in a palace, a lovely house, lived in the king's own house, had a beautiful wife that was the king's own daughter. And yet the king was chasing him. He had to hide and sleep in the wild, in the caves, and squat mosquitoes at night. All because the king was jealous. And he knew that there was something about David, and that if he wasn't careful, David would replace him as king. And Saul wanted his kids to be king. He didn't care what God wanted. He wanted the power and the honor of his name. So he got word that David and some of his mates were camped out in this area in a special place that was this beautiful oasis around there. So Saul marched along. There was soldiers. David was warned that this was happening, so him and his soldiers, his mates, sort of hid in a cave. And wow, this is where David's opportunity happened. You see, what happened? Saul comes in, he sees this beautiful flowing stream, so he had some water. Then he thought, I don't know about you guys, but if I eat, apricots or dried apricots, if you have a few too many or a few too many plums, Saul was thinking, I shouldn't have had all those apricots. Guys, I'm just going to go in this cave. I just need to do something. So he runs into the cave and then he took a position to make sure his cloak wasn't in the way so we can get anything on him, and he did his business in a cave. Well, this is where it was interesting, because it was the very same cave that David and his mates were in. And they were like, it's Saul, David, it's Saul. He's got no guards around him. So Saul was doing what he was doing. They were like, David, go, now's your chance, you'll be king, go, let's go. David pulled out a knife, snuck up behind Saul, trying not to breathe because it's a bit smelly, and he got his cloak, and ever so quietly took a piece of the cloak off, stuck it in his pocket, and walked back. David's mates, what are you doing, David? No, you can't. Go in and kill him. Kill him. No. Saul finished doing his thing, shall we say. Oh, that felt much better. And off he walked. And then David starts moving forward. What are you doing? You're a bit late now, man. You could have got him easy. You could have got him easy. He stands up. King Saul! Saul. He turned around. And there, looking back at him, was the man who he considered his biggest threat in his life, David. And David was there looking at him. And he said, Saul, my lord, my king, why are you hunting your servant David? I could have killed you in that cave, holding up the garment of the cloak. Saul looked at his cloak. Saul's guards were ready to, oh, the boss is going to be angry at this one. Sorry, boss. David held up the cloak, the piece that he cut. My lord and king, I would not ever harm you. You are God's chosen king. I am your servant and I will never hurt you. Saul put his hands in his head. He realized the Muppet mistake he had done. And he said, oh, David, I'm so sorry. Come back. All's forgiven, mate. I'm so sorry. But David he's a bit smarter. He knew that he just didn't trust Saul. Oh, my lord and king, it's okay. You're all good. I'm fine here. But please, I would never hurt you. I would never do anything to harm you. Sorry, David. Sorry. We'll head on over here to carry on and get some Philistines because I hear that they were close. Cheers, mate. He went off. Took his army away. David's men were like, oh, David, what were you thinking? That was your chance. You could have killed him easy. He was hunting you. Everyone would have thought, yeah, that's fine. Well, we get that. That's the right thing to do. It was a weird time back then. And he said, shh, guys, Saul was chosen by the living God to be king. Yes, God's told me I'm going to be king, but it's going to be in his timing. I'm not going to look at this problem and go, Saul's chasing me all around the desert, and he's probably going to do it again, guys. I don't trust him. But I am not going to kill someone that God's set there. It's wrong. Especially while he's going to the toilet, guys. Come on. But that was David's heart. He was known as a man after God's heart. Now, he made mistakes. Did he? What? But he always knew that when he made a mistake and someone reminded him about it, he would listen and he would work a solution. And the solution was prayer and saying, you know what, God, I'm so sorry. I have made a huge mistake. Please, Jesus, please, God, forgive me. He pleaded and he trusted God. And the Psalms are full of David's journal entries of him saying how much he trusts God. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall have nothing I don't need. You make all my enemies lay down before me. Prepare a table. You show them how special I am to you. He loved God, and he knew that no problem was too big for his God. Well, that's me, guys.